All right, you guys, we have all these wonderful little puppies that you've managed to bring into your homes, and now you're wondering, what do I do? Because sometimes when you start fitting that puppy into your home, it works really well, and sometimes you have some problems. It may be chewing, it may be housebreaking, all kinds of things that you may have problems with your babies. And so to figure out how to meld them into your house, what you've got to do is take a look at their environment. Where did these puppies come from? And if you were really lucky, you got to visit the house. Anybody get to go home and see where the puppies came from? Good. All right. If you can see that mom and that dad and see the environment that they came from, that is awesome. Did anybody get to see the puppy pile, where everybody's all piled on top of one another? Oh yeah. That is incredibly telling, because the puppy that's on top, that is the alpha puppy. That's the dominant one. That's the one that's going to, he has earned that right. He's not there just because he happened to end up on top. He earned it. He's like very dominant in play. He may bite the other puppies. He's very assertive. He's going to be pretty controlling and a little bit more difficult to train than some of the other puppies. Anybody get that puppy? You did? Okay, yes.
I'd say so. I'm not sure, but I think.
And that one may have too, okay? Now, the bottom of the pile, that little precious baby is the most submissive puppy. And that one comes with its own set of problems. Anybody get the puppy on the very, very bottom? You got the softie, okay. And they're just really quiet and really sweet, but they also have some things that can be challenging. Everybody else pretty much lines up in between those two. Now, when you bring the puppy home, he's thinking, okay, I got to recreate this pack thing. He knows what he's used to, so he kind of tries to recreate that whole pack at home. But the problem is, you didn't bring him into a dog pack, probably. You brought him into a human pack. And when you do that, suddenly the dog doesn't know what to do, because you're treating him as if he was a human, and he's reacting as a dog would react. So that, if you're going to do this, you've got to figure out where he's coming from and how to react to it. So that brings us to pack theory. And pack theory, I think, is probably the most important thing that you need to know about training your puppy, especially at this age. Dogs innately know there has to be a leader of the pack. Okay? The pack may be humans, it may be dogs, children, some combination, but there is a pack in your family. They know there has to be a person on top that has to be in charge. If you do not act like a pack leader, guess who's going to? They are, because there has to be a leader and they know it. But a puppy or a dog is very ill-equipped to become a pack leader. They don't know how humans operate, but they are sure going to try. So if you set the puppy up to be in charge of your household, he's going to do what he wants. He's going to chew on your furniture because he wants to. He's in charge. He gets to. He's going to pee on stuff because, hey, it's his house. He can do whatever he wants to do. He's going to sleep where he wants because pack leaders get the choice of the resting places. They get the choice of the mates. They get to eat first. They get to go out of doors first. They take you for walks. And basically, they run your lives. Anybody guilty yet? Nobody's guilty of that? I thought so. At least nobody's admitting it. Okay. So...
Or they don't realize they're doing it.
Well, and that could be too, is they don't know what's going on yet. So what you've got to do is you've got to become the pack leader. Now, that means a lot of crucial things. I think one of the most important thing is the dog needs to have to sleep on the floor. If you put him up on the furniture and on the chairs with you, then what's going to happen is he's going to think that he's just as good as you are. And it is wonderful to take this little baby and put him on your lap and hold him. But you think about, what are you going to do when this puppy gets to be 90 pounds? It's not quite as attractive then. And there's something about the level. If the dog is on the same level as you are, sure enough, he thinks that he's going to be in charge. So it's really important that that puppy stay on the floor. He needs to sleep on the floor, and whenever he's resting, anytime, he needs to be on the floor, not the furniture with you. That's probably a biggie. Anybody guilty of letting them sleep on the bed yet? Got one, okay.
Heard a lot of oops.
Oops, that's okay. Second, I think food's really important as far as, now with the little bitty ones, you do have to feed real frequently, but it's a good idea to put your food down, take it up, put it down, take it up. Not necessarily free feed unless you've got a medical problem going on. That kind of elevates your status. It makes you look more important to the dog because suddenly you've got, hey, I've got the food, man, and I give it to you. So that elevates your status. That's important. It's also good if you eat before the puppy eats because alphas eat first. Puppies eat second. Okay, so that makes a difference. Doorways are huge. You open the door and the puppies go running out. If they go running out in front of you, they are the ones in charge. Okay, so you really should, for safety's sake if nothing else too, is stop, make the puppy wait, you open the door, and then you take them outside. But don't let them run outside first. You want to make sure that they do stuff for you before you pet them. Now, it's really hard when they're this wonderfully cute not just to pet them because they're alive. All right? So what you want to do is just push them very gently into a sit, praise them, and then, let me borrow Puppy. And you just repeat that a few times. Sit. There you go. And praise him and tell him how wonderful he is. Good, Puppy. There you go. Good. All right, we need to talk about toys and playing with your puppy. Anytime that you play with your puppy, make sure that you don't do tug of war. What that does is teaches the puppy to pull against you, which is a very alpha thing. Now, if you do that, which I highly recommend you don't, but if you do, make sure that you win. Okay, you have to end up with the toy. That's huge. A lot of times your little golden puppies and stuff will come over and drop a toy in your lap and say, hey, play now. Best idea is to encourage them to sit for you first or lay down, praise them for that, and then let them go play and play with them. And then stop playing when you're ready to stop before they're ready to stop. Okay? That kind of puts you in the controller thing.
Okay, when you have a puppy and he takes something, like if he takes a shoe or he takes a towel off of the stove, how do you get it back from him in a way that's not tug of war or confrontational?
Well, what you're going to do is, if he's, first of all, you try and puppy-proof your house so he doesn't have those things down. So it teaches everybody to pick stuff up. But if he does get something, can you get a hold of him, or does he like run?
He runs.
All right.
With his new treasure.
With his new thing, yes. What I usually tell people to do that is like leave a light leash on them so that you can get within 3 or 4 feet and then just step on the leash, go get him, kind of get on top of him, which I'll talk about in a second, and then just pull it out of his mouth. Okay. But if he's not on leash, you really can't do a whole lot with that. Okay?
Okay.
All right, we're going to talk about voice tones because people call me and they go, well, I told him no. I said like no 4 times and he's just kept doing it. Well, do you think he's like born with this little dictionary that says no means you did something bad? They don't know what no means. They listen to your voice. So you need to have 3 basic voice tones. You've got the, yay, good pupper, doggy, that was so good. And they're like, oh yeah, this is a good thing. And then you got the, got it, which is the voice that says you made a mistake. Then you got a command voice, sit, down, stay. So you've got 3 distinct voices, and the dog will listen to those voices, and that tells him whether or not he's doing something right or something wrong. And this also brings us kind of to like, what do you do when your puppy makes a mistake? How do you praise him? How do you, for appropriate behavior, and what do you do when he does something wrong? You try and set your puppy up to do everything right as much as you possibly can. So that goes along with puppy-proofing your house. I like to keep them in 3 places. They're either on a leash, attached to me for a long time, or they're in the crate, or they're outside. So if you've got him in an enclosed room with you where you can watch him like a hawk, you never ever even take your eyes off, and you let him run around playing or whatever, give him toys that are appropriate for him to play with that you want him to play with. If he picks up something that he shouldn't have, just go over, honey, give him a little negative voice, doesn't have to be a big thing, take it away from him and give him an appropriate toy. Now, if it's something a little, like let's say he's chewing on the pillow, okay, or he's chewing on the furniture. That's another question people frequently call me with. It's like, he's chewing on my furniture. What do I do? And I'm like, what are you doing? Watching? Put the dog in the crate. Keep him on leash. You don't allow the dog to do all these things wrong and then so that you can correct him for it. Try and set it up so that he's doing the right thing as much as you possibly can.
Now, I heard if you put the dog in a crate for doing something bad, they'll learn to hate their crate.
Oh no, that's going to be like your sanity. I make the crate, you can use a little crate like this or whatever's appropriate for the dog, but you put him in there and give him a treat every time you put him in. Even if they did something wrong, you can still put him in the crate. It's okay, as long as you're putting him in the crate a lot of the time for doing good things too.
Okay.
So if you're putting him in and out all the time and you're like, I'm going to kill you, dog, you go in the crate and it's all right. That's fine.
All right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Right. If you feed the puppy in the crate, that makes the crate a really good place to be. You want to make sure that when your puppy comes in, he's willing to go in his crate. So every time you put that pup in the crate, give him a toy, give him something to munch on, give him their dinner, and pretty soon that crate becomes a pretty wonderful place. So when he is driving you nuts and you want to put him in the crate, you can do that, and that works out really well. Throw cans are an awesome tool. Throw cans are like a Pepsi can or 7-Up can or something, just a can of pop that you drank. Clean it out, put some pennies in it, put some duct tape on the end, and let's say that puppy runs over and starts to chew on a pillow. Look around the corner, boom, throw the throw can really close to him. You're not trying to like hit him with it, just enough to startle him and go, whoa, where'd that come from? So that he thinks maybe God just reached down and zapped him. Okay? It's a good thing. You don't really want him to associate it with you. You just want him to think that something really bad happened. If he's jumping up on counters, you can use mouse traps on the counters. And when because these guys are way too little for that, but like coffee tables, if they're jumping up there, put a mouse trap. I have never had a puppy get caught with one of those yet. And they also make those really big ones that could never catch anything. They just go off. So they jump up, they get surprised. I've had people do like pots and pans on stoves and tie a little string to them, and the puppy puts his feet up on the stove. You pull the string and the pots and pans come crashing down. Any time that you can make something really noisy, scary happen for the dog making a mistake, that's going to be a correction that you aren't really doing in his mind. Because you don't want the puppy thinking that you are the controller. You want the environment to be the controller. If they're fussing in the crate, a good thing to do with puppies fussing in the crate, there's nobody in here. But if they do, you could just, and better yet, put a towel over it before you do that. That way, yes, that way he doesn't know it's you. Sneak up behind him, play the drums on the crate. And if you do it consistently, pretty soon they'll be really quiet in the crate. They will. But if they fuss a lot in the crate and then you let them out, they've learned that fussing gets them out of the crate. So when they're in the crate, you want to be real positive and let them out when they're being good in the crate.
How long, if let's say my dog is barking, wants to get out of the crate, and he needs to be in there. And so I wait for him to stop barking to let him out, because I decide, well, maybe I should let him out. Maybe he's thirsty or something. So how long should I wait? 3 seconds, 4 seconds? He's quiet now. Before he's going to associate, and so he's...
I would say probably, 15, 30 seconds is fine. Okay. I would rather see him lay down and go to sleep and then wake him up and let him out.
So maybe I should just put earplugs in and leave him
and just kind of walk away. If you're thinking, well, maybe he really doesn't have to go potty, then I get him out and I take him out. But assuming he's already been out, he's already done his thing, everything should be fine, then I just either bang on the crate or put a towel over it, or I just walk away and just let him fuss.
Okay. Well, there are a lot of products out there that are like aversion things, sour apple or bitter apple, whatever that is, sprays, to keep. Are those type of aversion products okay to use?
Sure.
So they're...
Yeah, you can do those.
Okay. So
not a problem. Those are fine. Some dogs
interaction
just
isn't
eat
necessarily...
them.
Okay.
But most of the time they work. Yeah. Most of the time they work pretty well. So that's a good thing to do. If you can have the environment control the dog, then that's a lot better. That way you don't have to be there all the time.
Okay.
You want to make sure that you're praising your dog for appropriate behavior. So, because we've been talking about all the negative stuff, when your dog is doing something right, you need to pet him for it. Realize that your hands are really important to him. Anytime you touch your dog, you're praising him for that behavior. So if the baby comes up in his cute little self and climbs up your legs and you push him off with your hands, you've just praised him for jumping up on you. So what's he going to do to your family and your guests? He's going to jump up on it because it works. Okay? Instead, I just kind of, go ahead and get off of me. I throw a little nasty fit. If it's a big dog, I may do this. For these guys, you kind of do your ankle. I don't really like stepping on their feet and pinching their paws or stepping and that kind of stuff. I just don't like it. But I do bump them off and get a real grouchy noise, and then I take them, kind of push them into a sit and praise them for that. And if every time you pet your dog, you make him sit first, what's he learning? He's learning to come up to people and sit, and then he gets praised. And that's what you want. One time I was in my vet's office, and I usually go to the vet's office with 5 dogs. And I was in there, I had 5 dogs laying down around me. There's this gentleman with a dog on his lap, and he's got like a 60-pound dog on his lap, and it's growling at me, okay? This is not a small dog. He's growling away, and he's petting it. And I'm going, okay, dog trainer and me could not handle it any longer. Excuse me, sir. If you would quit petting your dog for growling at me, he might stop. And he went, oh. So he stopped petting the dog, and the dog quit growling. So what he was trying to do was reassure the dog that everything was okay, but he was actually setting the dog up and praising the dog for a behavior he didn't want. Many times I see people in class with the older dogs, they come in and the dog is biting, snarling, snapping, showing fear, hiding behind their legs, and they're treating them as if they're a little kid. And they pull them and they hug them and they pet them, trying to tell them that it's okay. And all they're really doing is reinforcing that behavior. So you have to remember, they are not little kids in fur coats. They are dogs. And you've got to treat them like dogs. And that makes all the difference in the world. Okay, we're going to also talk, when we're talking about corrections, you have to make sure that you're really consistent with what you're doing. It can't be okay one day to jump on the couch and the next day it's not okay. So it's never okay. It's not, oh, he's been so good, I think I'll let him do that this time. No, it's just like kids, all right? You've set the rules, you be consistent, everybody in the family needs to buy into it. You don't want mom being really lax and dad being really stern. You both, or vice versa, okay? Sometimes the guys are the bigger the wimps of the two. So you've got to make sure that you're consistent with the rules, all right? Now, sometimes throw cans and all of that stuff just is not enough. They're chewing on you. Does anybody have puppies that chew on them? Yeah. Yeah, okay. You know what this whole chewing thing's about? They're trying to figure out who's in charge. That is an alpha thing. That's them trying to get to be the dominant puppy. They chew on each other. So when they chew on each other, just like some of these guys that you've seen has been chewing on each other, they're trying to figure out who's in charge, who is more alpha. So when the puppy chews on you, he's trying to, yes, he's trying to, oh, let me have him. Come here. Hi, bud. You gonna be a chewer? Are you gonna be a chewer, Dad? Oh, yeah. So when they start this chewing business, quit. Good pupper. That was good. Now, notice he went from chewing to licking. Quit. Stop it. Good puppy dog. I learned so much from my see the licking, that's really good. From my 8-year-old Akita. She would wait and let the puppies that I brought home play and chew and chew. And finally she'd have enough. And she would growl and she would snarl and they'd keep at it. And finally she said, that's enough. And she'd grab him by the back of the neck, she'd shake him a little bit and grunt, quit. And then sometimes that would work for about 5 minutes. And then they'd be back. And the next thing you know, she'd put a paw and push him to the floor. If that didn't stop them, she'd lay on them and bite their necks until they quit. So when you get like, this is perfect. This is kind of in a listening position where you're over the dog. When you are physically over the dog like this, then that's you being dominant because you're the person on top. When the puppy puts his paw on you, he's being dominant. Quit. Good puppy. Yeah. Look at that. Isn't that good? He goes, I'll be good. Now, I want you. I want you, little one. Come here. Hi. I know. And now, if the listening position doesn't do it, then we go to a little bit tougher where we actually pull him down like this. Are you going to be, it's not bad. And you just squeeze with your knees, hold them down with your shoulders. I am not strangling him. But he may throw a fit, and he may not.
He's not in charge.
Because he is not in charge, exactly. I am holding him so that he can't get up and do anything. He has to stay right here. Good. Now, what we're going to do in just a second is I'm going to have you guys practice this with your puppies. All right? And what you want to be able to do is, I'll kind of demo this first, is you're going to have them in your, quit, here. And it's also important to, quit, stop it. You need to breathe calmly and praise. And honestly, think about good stuff. And just really try and think calming thoughts, quit, which may or may not work. And you're going to try to go from this position, I should have done this with Bud, up to here. Good. Quit. And then you're going to come up on your feet. Quit. And eventually be able to sit in your chair. Now, some of you may be able to sit up in your chair, and some of you may not be able to sit up in your chair, or even try standing. So if you're on the floor, you can just try kind of do what I'm doing. And then you're going to come up like this. Notice that where I am above the pup and over him. This is a very dominant position on my part. Anytime that you are over, that is dominance. The puppy laying still or looking away or quit, licking his lips are signs of submission. Good puppy. That's right. Stay. Quit. No. Stop. Quit. Good. Very good. Yes, that's good. Okay, that was a good puppy. Yes, they're going to mom. So when you look at the puppies playing with each other, when one puppy is on top of the other one, of course that's dominance. When they just put a foot up, that's dominance. I had this dog that I was working with that every morning I would be petting the top of her head, and the next thing I knew, she was taking her arms and looping them over my arms and pulling them off the top of her head. And I didn't think anything about it. A friend walked by and goes, "Isn't that awfully dominant?" And I went, "Oh my, it is." And I said, I didn't even catch that. So I stopped and I started holding her head down and making her let me pet the top of her head. Her training improved. It was just amazing. So when that pup puts his foot on you, that's not totally innocent. It's a little test to see if you're in charge or not. So I may let it go or I may not, depends upon the dog and what they're doing. But just be aware that is a dominance thing. If they're leaning into you, it might be dominance, it might be insecurity. You never know. You kind of got to know your dog. When the puppies, when they submit, they look down, they look away, they may urinate. Dominant puppies also put hackles up on the back of their neck, and they get that strutty thing going. That's all signs of dominance. So when you watch them play, you can see some of them duck and turn away, and some are like on top and ready to rock and roll. So you can kind of see where they're at. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to try and put them down in a listening position. So you want them sitting right in front of you like you've got them. Their little butts, kind of lean over them. Push them into a sit. Praise them. Tell them they're good puppies. That's good puppies. And now go ahead and kind of pull their feet out. Put your hand on top of their shoulders and kind of press them to the floor, gently but firmly, and hold them. Get on your knees with Bud. Get him like you're riding a horse. There you go. Push him on. Pull those legs out gently. Kind of push down. Don't let him roll to one side. Good with the collie puppy. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, he's perfect now. Oh, look at Guinness. She says, I can do this. This is okay. Good. Praise him. Good voice.
So how is this position different than Alpha rolling them onto their backs?
When you roll them onto their backs, I found that to be a pretty defensible position. In other words, they can claw and scratch at you. And so they can actually push you away and control the situation to a point. This, they have no control. So that's why I like this a lot better.
One more, real quick. This barking, is that saying I'm that?
That's saying I'm tough, I'm cool. Yeah. So when you've had enough of a bark, then you just reach over, quit, stop it, enough. Good baby. And then immediately when you do that, you notice the ears go back, the head goes down, and the whole attitude changes. And that's what you want to see. All right, puppy handling. You need to be able to handle these babies. Let me borrow.
He has no joints.
You have no joints?
Nope, he's double jointed.
Are you just double jointed? Okay. All right, I'm going to sit down with this because you're just a lug. You're just a lug. All right, when you're handling your baby, puppy, yes, you need to practice, get ready for toenail trimming. So you want to be able to, don't have joints. Play with their little toes. You can do this while we're talking. Play with their little toeses so that when you get ready to do their nails, you can. Quit. You almost want to turn this baby inside out. So you want to be able to hold him upside down if you need to. You want to be able to look in his ears. That's a good dog. Open his little mouth, look in there, stick your finger in there so you never have to pill him. That's okay. Another good one is to hold them like this and see if they will let you say hi, yes, and to see if they'll let you hold them and relax in this position. Oh, good baby. And so just sit there and mess with them. Some dogs don't like to have their flank touched. Now, as long as you're kind, there's no reason why that shouldn't be okay. So you pat their belly. You look at them everywhere, and you should be able to look at them any place that you want, okay? That is a biggie. We're going to talk about housebreaking tonight, and to me, it's like a no-brainer. It's such an easy thing for me to do, but I realize a lot of people have a hard time with housebreaking. And I think one of the crucial things that you need to realize is to going to successfully housebreak your dog, you have to supervise the puppy all the time. You cannot leave him in the laundry room or leave him in the kitchen blocked off and think that that's going to do it. It just doesn't work. You have to take the puppy in and out many, many times. And I think a crate like these that you're going to see here on the floor are really great. Two basic styles. The plastic variety is really nice if you're going to travel and you're going to have to fly a dog. You can fly him in a plastic crate. It's safe. It's enclosed. For a shy dog, this would probably be a really nice thing to use. If you want lots of ventilation, or if you want one that you can break down pretty easily to take in the car, the wire crate would be a good choice. When you have a crate and you're going to put a towel in it, I kind of vary on this a lot. Some dogs can do a towel or a rug or a bed and they're okay. Usually they just end up chewing on it, especially as puppies. Don't use something like this, because if you do, this is prime material for a puppy to chew on and cause some intestinal blockage. So I would not use a rug like this. If they're a little bit older and they're not going to chew on something, fine, put something in here. Otherwise, what can happen with that is that you put it in there, and if the puppy pees in it, it absorbs it, and then the puppy doesn't mind. Now, the whole idea of a crate is it fulfills the dog's denning instinct. They like to get in someplace really small where it's safe, where nobody can hurt them, and they feel protected. So if a mother dog has her puppies out in the wild, she's going to find a hole someplace. They're going to go underneath a porch, in a shed, someplace like that to have those puppies. So this is that whole den instinct that this fulfills. But it only needs to be big enough for the puppy to stand up, turn around, and lay down. He does not get to set up light housekeeping. So for a lot of these little guys, this is too big a crate. So if you're going to look at a puppy, say, this size, this would be the maximum size of a crate that you would want to put the puppy in. You wouldn't want something very big because he could pee and poop in one end and sleep in the other end, and that would defeat your purpose. So let's do an example of how to put a puppy in a crate. Oh, who shall I borrow? Let me have Bud. Come here, Bud. You want to go in the kennel, Bud? What's up, Bud? You want the crate to be a really nice place. So you can put him in the kennel. Hi, Bud. Kennel. Dad, a good puppy. Shut the door. Praise him. Tell him he's a good puppy. Now, the first few times, you may put him in, take him out, put him in, take him out to get him used to it. You can give him treats in the crate, let him know it's a good place to be. My favorite thing to do if he fusses is to have towels draped over the crate. So if he fusses too much, I can come up and I can smack the crate. So I wouldn't want to do it where he could see me, but I would smack it on top like that. Or take your throw can, throw the can close to, down on the floor next to it so it makes a loud noise so it scares him. Just enough to keep him quiet. Once he's quiet, then if you want to take him out of the crate, then that's a good time to do it. You don't want to take him out of the crate while he's fussing. Because if he fusses and you take him out of the crate, what's he going to do whenever he wants out of his crate? He's going to fuss. That's right. And they learn that very quickly. Talk about kind of scheduling. What you want to do basically, get up in the morning, first thing, get the puppy outside. Maybe have the puppy's crate next to the door is a good idea if you got a real young puppy. Get them outside. They're going to pee. They're going to poop. They're going to run around and play. You may want to feed and water them then. You may want to do it outside. And then they're probably going to pee again and maybe poop again. So it's pretty normal for a puppy to pee and poop. Gosh, he may pee 2 or 3 times and he may poop once or twice first thing in the morning. That's not unusual. Then you can bring him inside for maybe 10 minutes of free time. Gradually build that up to maybe a half an hour. Then put him back in the crate. Hour, 2, depends upon the age of the dog. Gradually make it longer and longer. Get him out again. Repeat the process. Go out, pee, play, poop. Maybe have a little bit to eat or whatever. And just keep repeating that process. If you have any accidents, what's going on is you are leaving the dog out too long. That's your fault, not the puppy's fault. So make sure that that puppy goes to the bathroom and that you watch him like a hawk, and then you put him back in the crate when you can't watch him any longer. So it's not hard. You just got to do it over and over and over again. All right, questions on housebreaking? All right.
I am planning on getting a crate. We have a small crate right now, and she's rapidly outgrowing it. So I'm going to get a big enough one for her to grow into, and I'm going to get one with a partition. The problem is, how do I know how big to get it? Because all dogs grow different sizes, and do I get one for her to be tall enough where her head doesn't touch when she's standing up?
Yes. For a golden retriever, it will tell you like how many pounds, and you want the size, I'm guessing, up to 90 pounds, which is usually considered an extra large in many companies. So it will give you listings of different breeds on the box. Okay. Up to 9 pounds, because my friends just bought a golden retriever puppy, and that's what we got was an extra large up to 90 pounds. So it's going to be, like this wide, about that long, and about that tall.
Yeah, that was my question, because
it's 48 inches long.
I read that golden retrievers get up to 75 pounds, but then the height is a lot taller than the...
I think the ones that are like 48 inches long is the size that you would need. And just partition it off so that he just has room enough to sleep, and then gradually move it back. And that works really well.
All right.
Good. What other questions do we have on housebreaking? Is anybody having any housebreaking problems?
He wants to go outside and play instead of do his business, and then I walk around for half an hour out in the yard.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I actually read in a book someplace that when you take him to the bathroom, you go, hurry, hurry, hurry. And so they learn when they really got to go to the bathroom, you're saying hurry, hurry. So he associates that word with going to the bathroom. What I do is I take them out for what I think is a reasonable amount of time, but they haven't gone. I put them back in the crate and leave them in the crate for another half an hour, depending upon the age of the dog, and then try it again.
Can I let them sleep on the bed at night, even if they're holding it?
No, absolutely no way. If you're letting the dog sleep on the bed at night, what you're doing is allowing them to be alpha. And if they are alpha, then they're going to be on the same level with you. And as a result, they were not going to listen to you later on. So probably the biggest thing I see with problems in dogs, if I look, they're all letting their dogs sleep on beds. So I would say no, not unless you're exceptionally good.
What about the dog throws a complete fit and you cannot shut it up?
Put in earplugs. No, what you can do is like you can do the throw can at the crate. You can throw pans at the crate. Make sure you've got something over it so the dog doesn't know that you're throwing it.
Completely covered.
Completely covered. So the dog does not realize you are the one doing it. So don't go, shut up, and then throw the can. Just have it covered, throw the can, bang on top of it, and walk away. Because if he throws a fit and you let him out, you're done. It's just, that's what's going to happen.
Okay.
Mine's, like I said, that, you know, just thinking when you're home and you don't think you need to crate them as much and stuff, and you're there, you know, but it worked a lot better still to get him crated and taught him to hold it.
That's a common fallacy is that people think if I'm home, then I can just let the dog in and out as often as I want. And you suddenly become a slave to your dog, and he's not learning to hold it.
Yeah.
And plus, by putting them in and out of the crate, you're adding a lot of structure to their lives. And you are the one providing, so they're going to elevate your status. So they need to be in crate for several hours at a time, even though you are home, because your life does not have to revolve around that dog.
How long can a young puppy this age stay in the crate? Like, because I work.
It really depends upon the age of the dog, but like how old? Like 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 3 months?
Right.
3 months, you could probably get at least 4 hours. And I've seen 4-month-old puppies and 3-month-old puppies, you know, go all night. So you might be able to get 8 hours out of them, but at least 4, I would think. I think a common rule is an hour for every month old they are. So 3 months, they could stay 3 hours. But I've seen most puppies be able to handle it much longer than that.
So I shouldn't feel guilty.
No, do not feel guilty. And really try to avoid ever letting your dog go to the bathroom in the house. Because if wherever they pee at, they look around and go, oh, I'm peeing and I'm in the house. They're not necessarily looking down and going, oh, it's a wee-wee pad. Okay, so I've seen a lot of housebreaking problems come from people who started on the wee-wee pads or whatever those things are, and then they try and move them outside. And the dog has a hard time making that transition. Now, I know there are extenuating circumstances, like in Minnesota, where the snow is really tall, really high or whatever. So there are exceptions to that rule, but generally speaking, I try and avoid that as much as possible.
Don't you want to train your dog to ask you to go out, ask them when they need to go out?
You know, I was looking at a book this weekend because we helped a friend pick out a puppy. And in the trick book that I was looking at, it had how your puppy can tell you when he's hungry, how to tell your puppy to tell you when he wants to go outside, and all of those things relating to the puppy telling you what he wants. And sometimes that can be good for certain situations, but when I kind of back off of that and look at it from the whole viewpoint, I really don't want the dog having that much control. Because if you say, a lot of people do the doorbell with like bells on it or something. And that's kind of a cute idea, and for some people it works really well. But if the puppy just wants to go outside and play versus going to the bathroom, then he's constantly going up and ringing the doorbell saying, hey, I want to go outside. Well, he just wants to go out and play, not pee. So I would really rather have the dog going on my schedule, and I say, okay, we're going to go outside now, we're going to play now, we're going to pee now. And it puts me in control instead of the dog in control. So I guess what I think I like is making sure that I'm regulating the dog and running the dog's life instead of the dog running my life.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What we've been seeing with the puppy stuff is puppies trying to figure out who's in control. Okay, they've been trying to determine a lot of pack theory here that we talked about last week. And some of them, when they get on top of one another, that's when they're being dominant, and the other ones are on the bottom and they're submitting. Now, we've been noticing that some of the little puppies at first took it and took it and took it, and now finally they've had enough.
And he's wagging his tail.
It's really good to get your puppy around other dogs that are about the same size to let them understand about bite inhibition. If a bigger dog never challenges them and never puts them in their place, then they sort of grow up thinking that they're the toughest kid on the block. And that's a dangerous place, because then the dog thinks that he can take on anybody and anything, and he's never learned to bite gently. Okay? And if they're playing with a lot of other puppies, they learn they can play, but they don't have to be nailing people all the time. Okay, just make sure on housebreaking that you don't leave them out for too long. Someone mentioned earlier that, can I back up? And yes, you can. So let's say you've worked your way up to where you're letting the puppy run around the house for an hour, and one day he makes a mistake. Then immediately, I'm going to back him up maybe to 10 minutes, and then 15, and then 20, and gradually expand that time where it gets longer and longer again. So anytime the puppy makes a mistake, back him way, way up, and sort of retrain him to go with it. Okay?
If you have been negligent and your dog is urinating, but you see him, what is the best way to correct the situation?
I usually grab them and do the quit it, and use a negative voice. I don't use no, because they don't really know what it means. It's not programmed in there. And realize that I made the mistake of leaving the dog out too long. Now, as the puppies start getting older and the testosterone starts coming in the males, then you may see them start to do a little marking where they're trying to pee in a lot of different places and not really, eliminating their bladder. And that's just telling you that it's maybe getting close to neutering the dog when they start marking, and check the age out.
Okay, so after you do the reprimand, do you put them in their kennel? Do you
Yeah,
take them
probably would.
outside immediately and try to get them to go out there?
If I think the puppy is finished peeing, finished pooping, I just put them in their crate and realize I made a mistake. Because otherwise, if you just take them outside, you're going to say, okay, you pee in the house, then you go outside. You don't want
So
that.
it's like rewarding.
Exactly. So you don't want to do that. All right, biting. That's usually like one of the top questions I get. What do I do when the puppy bites on my hands? What that puppy is doing is he's treating you like a pack member, all right? He's treating you like a litter mate. He wants to, if you've been watching the puppies, what do they do to each other? They bite and chew on each other all the time. So they're checking you out to see if you're going to put up with it. And the answer to that, of course, is no, you're not. So when they bite you, grab them by the back of the neck, give them a quick little shake, tell them to quit it, stop it, whatever voice you want, whatever words you want to use in that nasty voice. And better yet, give them something nice to chew on. So replace your hand with something that is appropriate. But I still want you to do the negative, nasty noise whenever they bite your hands, okay? Don't let them get away with that. Now, this brings us to toys. What kind of good toys? If you do a little stuffed toy like some of these guys, just make sure that there's no little buttons or stuff that they can pull off and eat, all right? Stuffed toys are great. If they've got squeakers, you're going to find the puppies are going to try and kill it. They want the squeakers. So they grab them and try and kill those, and that's what they're shaking them for. Is a squeaker, Joy? Is there a squeaker? Look. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Here you go. So these are good little toys, especially for puppies. Now when they get older, I brought some of my used ones in. Galileos are like wonderful. These come in 3 sizes. If I read my literature right, they're modeled on an elephant bone or something, and they shrunk them down to make them dog size. And there's something about this shape that a lot of dogs really like to chew on. And you can get little ones, medium ones, big ones. They are not for throwing. You don't want to hurt anything, like knock out teeth, so don't throw these. And if your puppy drops it, move your feet really fast, because that also hurts. If they chew on them enough to where they look like this, it's time to throw them away, okay, because then they can start getting too much of that in their mouth. So these are really good. Ooh, new stuff. Galileos. This is a nice shape. There's something about this shape that a lot of dogs like to chew on. This, I think, is a Nylabone product or something kind of rubbery. They can retrieve this. Now you can tell I have big dogs, okay? So that's why we have all these big toys. A favorite are the Kongs. And the Kongs are really awesome. This is a real heavy-duty one. What you can do with a Kong is you can put dog food in here, or you can put treats in here, you can put peanut butter in here. Now you're going to want to wash it once in a while. Peanut butter and treats are good. Put this in his crate with him, and he'll spend like, 2 hours trying to get the food out of the Kong. So if you're thinking, you've got to be gone a long time and you're concerned that he's been in the crate for too long, then he's bored, give him a Kong filled with goodies. These are awesome. And they also bounce really funny too. So a lot of dogs think these are just pretty darn irresistible. And they come in all sizes and all shapes and colors. Yay, Marlo! Because that's a big dog toy. With your chew toys, absolutely no human stuff. People tend to want to give them like socks or old tennis shoes. Don't. Because they're chewing on something with your scent. And then they're not going to know the difference between your old worn-out tennis shoes and your $100 tennis shoes that you just bought. So make sure that you don't give them any socks or any type of human stuff. I've had several puppies who got into the laundry, who ate socks and underwear because it was left laying around. It smelled so wonderful. And that can cause stomach blockages, and you can end up with a very expensive vet trip. So keep the dirty underwear picked up off the floor, and don't ever let them chew on human stuff. Real big deal. We're going to talk about dog food. And I have to admit, dog food's kind of been my soapbox thing for a long time. And I'm going to give you Charlotte's opinion, as well as some pretty tried and true information. I'll let you guys kind of decipher for yourself what you think makes sense to you, and let you add your own, and add that to your own research. Basically, there are two types of dog food. You've got a meat-based foods and you have grain-based foods. A grain-based food doesn't digest as well for your dog, so he ends up eating more, and you end up scooping more in the backyard. It's usually less expensive, but you have to buy more because you got to feed him more. A meat-based food, on the other hand, usually costs more, but the dog digests it better, and as a result, you get to feed less. It's better for him, and you scoop up less in the backyard. So you obviously want a meat-based food. Now you should also go for a food that is naturally preserved. There's a lot of preservatives that they use that they have shown to be harmful to dogs' health. I believe one of the common ones that's really bad is ethoxyquin, and you don't see that very often anymore. It used to be a very popular preservative, but it's kind of gone by the wayside. So when you see the words naturally preserved or whatever, that's a good thing to look for. Then you look at, okay, when do I move him from puppy food to adult food? If you've got a big dog, your boxers, your Goldens, or some of your sporting breeds, you really don't want those dogs to grow too fast. Because if they do, their hips don't form properly or their knees don't form properly, and you could have some problems. So you want to switch those dogs off of puppy food onto adult food somewhere, I'm thinking maybe between 7 and 9 months. Good question to ask your vet as to what they feel. You'll see some foods that are large breed puppy. That's what it's designed for. So those puppies don't grow too fast. So make sure that you are really aware of that. You look at your different types of meat sources. You've got lamb, you've got chicken. Lamb's pretty good for allergy problems, skin and coat problems. So lamb does a nice job with that. Chicken's probably my favorite all-round food. I think that works really well on most dogs. Beef sometimes maybe puts a little bit of weight on, but beef's a good alternative. I've seen venison diets. I've seen fish and potato diets. The fish and potato diets are usually for dogs who have allergies. So those are all things that you can look at. But then you try and decide, okay, out of all these dog foods that all have chicken, which one do I feed? I'd highly recommend that you get the best food that you can afford. You want it to be all natural as much as possible. So if you look at the list of ingredients and it says human-grade chicken, yes, that's what you want. You don't want just chicken. Human-grade chicken would be far better. I would avoid things like poultry digest, which is just internal organs ground up and thrown in dog food. Poultry byproducts, beaks, feathers, claws, ground up and thrown in dog food. I had a friend one time who pulled out a chicken claw out of her dog food. All right, remember that dogs are carnivores. They are meat eaters. They are not grain eaters for the most part. They're not herbivores. They are carnivores. So that's why you really want to do the meat-based thing. All right, now that's the pretty standard tried and true information. Now we're going to get into Charlotte's theories. You know, I'm not a vet. I'm a school teacher. I've been training dogs for 20, 25 years, and I've seen a lot of stuff and I've had a lot of dogs. So I'm going to kind of give you the background on why I feel the way I do about dog food. Years and years ago, I had like 5 dogs. And as those dogs got older, I started noticing a lot of unusual symptoms. I saw sebaceous cysts, which are like little boils that come up, ear infections, lesions on Dancer's mouth that simply would not heal, hot spots, chewing and itching of the skin. Another dog had cancer. And about the time that all this is happening, I was exploring some Eastern medicine for myself, and I had found it to be very helpful. All kinds of different alternative medicines were working very well for me, and I was doing a lot of reading. So I'm like, well, if it works for me, maybe it'll work for my dogs. And in the book that I was reading, it said that those kinds of symptoms were symptoms of too much heat in the dog's body. And I thought, that's interesting. I'd already noticed that my dog's ear infections would come and go according to what food I was feeding. And I thought that was interesting. I kept thinking, well, you know, when you have yeast infections, that relates to food, so maybe there's a connection here. So I got a hold of a veterinarian in Jefferson City and said, hey, what do you think about this, Sherry? Does this make sense? Because I knew she did a lot of alternative work. And she says, oh yeah, there is a correlation. And I said, all right, this is what's happening with my dogs. Can you help them? And she said, sure, bring them down. So I loaded up all 5 dogs, went to Jefferson City, and I said, is this symptom of too much heat in their bodies? And she said, yes, it is. Can you fix it? Sure. So with using acupuncture, she was able to move all the heat through their bodies and out. And as a result, every symptom went away, except for the dog that had cancer. She still died. But no more ear infections, no more sebaceous cysts. The lesions that nobody could heal with all kinds of rounds of antibiotics went away. No more hot spots, and no more itching and scratching. Now, about every 6 weeks, if I didn't get in to get the needles done, one of the dogs would start chewing on themselves. And sure enough, wherever that chewing spot was always on a meridian that needed to be needled. It was hot. It needed to have the energy move through it. And I'm like, yes, this is good. I'm liking it. Was I liking the 3-hour drive? No. So I'm talking to Sherry going, now, all right, we know we got too much heat in the dog's body. Where is it coming from? And she said, commercial dog food. And I said, and what's my alternative? And she said, make your own dog food. And I went, I've got 5 dogs and a life. I don't think so. What are my alternatives next on the line? And she said, get the healthiest dog food that you can. It's not processed very much, any more than it has to be. And add some vegetables to it. You know, vegetables like carrots and green beans and broccoli. And, you know, you have to kind of do a little, you got to do some research. Before you just start throwing stuff on your dog's food, you need to do a little research and read and find out what's good, what's bad, etc. And I started doing that, and lo and behold, it worked. And those visits to the vet became a little less often. And I'd still have to go maybe 3 or 4 times a year, but it made a tremendous difference in my dogs. So over the years, what I've come to realize, or at least what I think is going on, is that when you cook a food, you put heat energy into it. When you eat that food, the heat energy is released into your body. So if you think about us as humans, in the wintertime, what do we like? We like chili. We like roast. We like stuff that's been cooked a long time that has a lot of heat energy in it because it keeps us warmer. In the summertime, we're doing ice cream. We're doing salads. We're hitting all the light, cool foods that cool our bodies off. All right, that keeps us balanced. What do we do to our dogs? We give them hot, over-processed dog food 365 days a year, and eventually, for some dogs it may be as young as 2, other dogs it may be 8 or 10, they're coming up with itching, scratchings, allergies, all these symptoms of too much heat oozing out of their bodies, and I think it's a direct result of what food they're eating. Now, I think what's happening is when a dog food company is making dog food, they probably are cooking that food quite a while at a pretty decent temperature so that it absorbs, so that it has a good shelf life, so it doesn't spoil. And it's putting a lot of heat energy into the dog food. They eat it, it's released into the dog's body, and there you go. So, what I did about 3 years ago is I took my one Akita that has a lot of hip problems, that he was just getting too much heat in his body, even with good dog food. It just wasn't happening. So I decided to start making my own dog food. And I bought a book that had a good recipe in it. The authors looked like they were sound people, knew what they were talking about. And I started making food for him. And lo and behold, about 2 months later, she'd check him out, no heat in his body. Amazing difference. This dog, by rights, should not be even walking, and he is. The vets look at his knees and his hips, and they're like, he's horrid. But because of the good dog food, because of the needles, because of the supplement, he energetically, he is so strong, he's already lived 2 years past what he should have lived. He's made a huge difference. Talked my boyfriend into letting me put his dogs on the same diet, his hunting dogs. Lo and behold, amazing differences. Coats got shinier, their attitudes got better. The dog's health overall just greatly improved. Now, what I've come to find out is I don't like cooking dog food. It takes a long time. I use a raw diet now where I get on the internet. One of the products that I've used and liked is called Urban Wolf. And that so far has been the easiest thing that I have found. And it is a powder that you mix with water, some flaxseed oil, and some sunflower oil with hamburger, raw hamburger. Stir it up really good. Feed them what you're supposed to feed them, and there's your dog food. And there's no grains in it. It's totally raw meat. Now, you cannot just go to the store, get some raw hamburger, and pop it down in front of your dog. That is not nutritionally complete. So you've got to get one of these powders or something that you mix with it to make it a nutritious diet. Okay, that's huge. There's also some frozen dog food products out on the market that you can get. Prairie, I think, makes one that I've seen that you can actually get here in town. And there, if you get on the internet and start looking, you will find all different kinds of frozen dog foods that you can order in, thaw them out, feed them. You can make it if you want. What I've found so far is this has been the best that I've seen so far. And it's made a huge difference in our dogs. It's just tremendous. Now, I'm sure you've got questions about this.
Well, I have one, and then I have one in response to
that. Okay.
What you were saying. I heard that you should not give dogs raw meat for many different reasons, but
well, it depends. They have to get used to it. If you just slam them in with raw meat, you're going to have a problem. Because I did that one time. I gave the dog some raw steak, and I came home to explosive diarrhea. Midnight trip to the emergency clinic. Not a pretty sight. So you have to adjust them over. I did like 5 days of getting the dog used to the raw meat and have had no problems. So I know that's what they commonly used to say, but it's not. The alternative vets are not saying that now.
okay.
Well, mine's a eating thing that he's not supposed to eat, which is the kitty litter box.
You mean the candy machine?
Yeah, the candy machine, and I really appreciate the help with that, but not that much.
Well, what you need to do, you're not going to fix that. You need to take a baby gate and put it in front of the kitty litter box securely. Point it the other direction, clean it often.
What about dog snacks?
Dog treats are okay as long as you realize that you're feeding them extra food and stay away from corn and wheat. Lots of dogs are allergic to corn and wheat, and as a result, they get allergic to it. And a lot of snacks are made with corn and wheat. So that cuts out most of them. But they're okay. Just don't do a whole lot to where your dog's getting all kinds of extra calories that way.
What about rawhides?
Rawhides are all right as long as you pay attention to where they come from. So you want rawhides that are made in the United States, because if they're made out of the country, then you may have preservatives in the rawhide that isn't good for your dog. And also you want ones that come apart in little bitty pieces, because if you get the ones that come apart in globs, you could get a blockage going in their stomach. So those little twisty ones, that when they get wet, they turn into little leather soppy rectangles, don't do those. But if they can chew off little pieces of it, they're fine.
I see the pig ears in the store all the time. Are they any good for them?
Pig ears are okay if they eat them slowly, but they're pretty fat. I mean, this is a good example of a pig ear. If they eat this whole thing and they're a really small dog and they don't metabolize it very well, it can cause problems. I had a dog that spent like 3 days in the vet clinic from eating a pig ear all at once. So if it's a big dog and they chew on little bits of it, fine. But if it's a really kind of a small dog and they're going to down that baby, I wouldn't do it. I'd be real careful about that. I do a lot of the Galileos and Nylobones and things like that versus the treats. All right, well, tonight, this is going to be Ask the Vet Questions night. So we have brought Dr. Billie Dean in, and she is going to be answering your questions about all the things you wanted to know about puppies.
All righty. Well, like Charlotte said, this is Ask the Veterinarian night. So what I'm going to do is start out and talk about some of the most frequent questions that people have for me when they bring home a new puppy. Now, you may have questions about these topics, or you may have questions about things totally unrelated, and please ask them. And you can ask them while I'm talking, you can ask after I'm done. Feel free to go ahead and break in. Now, I'm going to start with feeding, because that's probably the most common question I get when somebody brings home a new puppy, is how should I feed this puppy appropriately? Now, to start with, I'm going to assume you all are feeding your puppy a good, quality, name brand puppy food appropriate for the size of your puppy's breed. We're just going to assume that. There's lots of good types of dog foods on the market, so I'm not going to go into any of that. We're just going to assume you're already doing that. But let's talk about how often you ought to feed these guys. Now, a lot of that depends on how old they are when you bring them home, because the younger the puppy, the more frequently they need to eat. And if you'll draw the analogy to a human baby, a lot of your questions about your puppy will come as common sense sort of things. Just like an infant human needs to eat very, very frequently, the younger the puppy, the more frequently they're going to need to eat. Most of the time, young puppies will come into our homes around 5 to 7 weeks of age. These puppies need to eat about 4 times a day during their waking hours. That's not assuming that you're going to get up in the middle of the night and feed them, because most puppies are going to be fine throughout the night. Now, there's an exception when we're talking about the little bitty breeds, the Chihuahuas, the Yorkies, the teacup poodles. We're going to talk about that a little bit more after I'm done. But unless you're talking about a really, really tiny breed of puppy, 4 times a day when then they're in that 5 to 7 week of age range is a pretty good idea as a generality. Now, 7 to 12 weeks of age, most of the time these guys can go down to 3 times a day, spread out during the day, during the waking hours. And then after 12 weeks of age, most of the time you can cut them down to twice a day. So that is as a general rule. Now, I've talked about the frequency of feeding. You notice I haven't talked about leaving their food down all day, and that's really not a very good idea for a couple of reasons. It will make it harder to house train them if they nibble throughout the day. It also will tend to make them a little pickier if they're just eating little bits at a time. So I encourage you to get your puppies used to eating at discrete meal times. Put their food down, leave it down for 10 or 15 minutes, and pick it up. Okay? And then they will start to learn, just like a child will, that they need to eat their food when you put it down. Okay? Now, if we've got the little bitty guys, those puppies have much faster metabolisms and they need to eat more frequently. So if you've got little puppies in the 1 or 2 pound range, these guys are probably going to need to eat at least every 4 hours during the day. Again, most of these puppies, as long as they're healthy, are going to go through the night just fine. But these guys require more frequent feeding. So if you do end up with one of these really, really tiny breeds, keep in mind you got to feed them more frequently, okay? Now, when I ask folks what they're feeding their puppies when they come in and see me for the first time, probably 90% of them tell me dry food of some variety. And if I can draw that analogy back to human babies again, we would not in our wildest dreams take a baby off of a bottle and immediately start feeding them potato chips and hamburgers. But we somehow think that it's appropriate to start feeding a very young puppy dry food. Now, sometimes we'll moisten it, but still keep in mind that this is a tremendous change from what they're used to when they've been nursing mom. Now, if they've been totally weaned and on dry food for a while, that may be a different thing. But many times when you bring home a young puppy, several things are at work here. Number one, they're really, really stressed. You know, they've left their home, they've left their support structure, their mom, their brothers and sisters, and they've gone into a totally new environment, and they're scared. That's going to affect their appetite. Secondly, they don't have the competition of their brothers and sisters to make them want to eat. And thirdly, they may not be weaned completely. You may be told they've been weaned, but unless they're totally separate from mom, chances are they've been sneaking back there for a snack. So these puppies may be nibbling on dry food with their brothers and sisters, but they may not be getting that many of their nutrients from it. So I encourage you to feed your young puppies, when you bring them home, some canned food. Now, if you just absolutely can't bring yourself to do that, by all means moisten their dry food. But keep in mind, canned food is going to typically be more palatable or taste better to them. And during that time frame when they first come home, we want them to eat. We don't want them to go a day or two without eating. That's one of the most frequent things I see when people bring a new puppy home is they haven't eaten for 2 or 3 days. So Monday morning, here you are with a lethargic puppy that's dehydrated and low on blood sugar because they haven't eaten. So don't hesitate to feed them a good quality canned food, even if they haven't been on it. And don't hesitate to continue feeding that for at least that 12-week period where they're really getting adjusted to their new home. I think that's very, very important. Now, the small breed dogs will really do much, much better if they're on some canned food in addition to their dry food. Dry food is harder for their little immature intestinal tracts to digest. The other thing is, when we're feeding them dry food, these puppies, particularly if they're not weaned completely, may not be used to drinking that much water. So we take them from a situation where they've been getting, you know, over a 90% water diet to a 90% dry matter diet. If we'll feed them canned food, we're going to be including a certain amount of water in the food we're giving them. So dehydration is not as much of a factor. Keeping water in front of these puppies is not as much of a factor. So that's something for y'all to kind of keep in mind. Now, talking about water, a lot of people ask me if they need to leave water in with their puppies all the time. I'll kind of let into this. If you're feeding them canned food, they're getting a lot of water out of their diet. But certainly they need access to water throughout the day. However, if they're drinking lots of water late in the evening, it may be hard for them to make it through the night without needing to go outside and urinate. So, you know, most of my clients will take their water up from puppies when they put them to bed, and that's okay. It's okay to do that. It's also okay to not necessarily leave water in the crate with the puppy if they make a mess, as long as you're checking these puppies at fairly frequent intervals. Which kind of leads me into the next topic. People ask me, when we keep puppies in crates or little confinement areas or by themselves at home in the laundry room, how long can we leave them safely? Charlotte has led into this, but in my experience, you don't want to go much longer than about 6 hours without checking on a very young puppy, okay? Now, the smaller breeds, the little teeny tiny ones, you need to check on them more frequently because they're going to need to be fed more frequently. But for other than the really tiny breeds, probably shouldn't go longer than 6 hours when they're under 12 weeks of age. Okay? Now, that means if we're working 8, 9, 10-hour work days, somehow or another we need to have somebody check on those puppies, take a break in the middle of the day, take them to work with us, or do something so that we're making sure those puppies aren't going for too long without having access to food and water, being sure they're okay, having an opportunity to go outside. So as a general rule of thumb, that's what I'd encourage you to do. A lot of times after puppies get over their rapid growth phase, which is usually in the 6 to 9 to 12 month of age range, there will be a short period of time when your young dog or puppy will stop eating as much. It may only be for a few days, but if you notice this, what they're telling you is, my nutritional needs have changed a little bit. I don't need quite this much food. And if you will be sensitive to this, and cut back a little bit, you will tend to keep this puppy at a normal optimum weight. But if we ignore this and keep feeding more calories than they really need, then they'll get to where they're eating it because it's in front of them. Just like we'll eat more of a really good meal than we really need because it tastes good. And then this will be the first step towards these guys getting to be heavier than they need to be or obese. So that doesn't really relate to these young guys right now, but it is something for you just to be aware of, because most puppies will go through that little phase where they'll kind of tell you, hey, you know, I don't need quite so much. But in his case, I would wonder if maybe we're not putting down a little more than he needs. He's at a nice weight. He's not too fat, but that's the first thing I would play with.
We've been feeding him 3 times a day, and I want to get him off that middle feeding. So maybe I should just go to twice a day.
And that could be a big aspect of it too. And when I talked about this 3 times a day feeding, a lot of times these guys will tell you when they don't need it anymore, because they will stop being as interested in each meal. So then experiment. Cut them down to twice a day and see if it works better. That's an okay thing to do.
I'm still feeding Daisy 3 times a day, and we've gradually gone up from like a 1/3 cup each feeding. Now we're up to a cup each feeding. When do you know? I know how to look at her to see how the ideal weight, but when is the maximum? How much should they?
Well, that's a very good question, particularly in light of the fact that you're talking about a large breed puppy. Golden Retrievers, Labradors, Boxers, all these large breed puppies need to be fed very, very carefully so that they don't get too big too fast, and they need to be fed a large breed puppy food, which I'm sure you're doing. And you are correct to use her body as your guide. You are looking at her and making sure that she's slender to determine how much you feed her. So you're doing exactly the right thing. What I tell my clients is to be very restrictive in the calories that you feed them up to about the 6 month of age range. So be careful in increasing the food. You know, if she's absolutely gaunt, or if she doesn't have enough energy to go play, you probably need to feed her more food. But as long as she is active and playful and still continuing to grow at a slow but steady rate, you know, increase that by small increments, 1/4 cup at a time, okay? And then once they get to that 6 month of age range, you can feel like you can start increasing that food a little more, continuing to make sure that they have a nice, discreet waistline, both looking down from the top and from the side, so that they have a wasp-like waist. That's a very, very good question.
I've been recently reading this book on boxers, specific to boxers, and one of the things that it said in there that I had never heard of before was that boxers are a little more susceptible to bloat. I didn't even know what bloat was. This is my 5th boxer. And do I need to worry about that? I mean, especially with dry food, he'll inhale it, drink a lot of water, and then go running around afterwards.
All large breeds can be susceptible to bloat. And typically we worry about the deep-chested breeds as being susceptible to this. Studies have indicated a direct correlation between the number of times per day that a dog is fed and whether that food is fed in a dry form or not. So from a prevention of bloat standpoint, we recommend that dogs be fed twice a day, not once a day, and that food probably be fed in a wet form. Now, you may be feeding dry food, but you may want to mix it with water, because that's going to decrease the likelihood of it getting in the stomach and then expanding and bloating. Lots of other things have been implicated. Hard play right after they eat,
and he does that.
rolling around. For the most part, we haven't been able to draw direct correlations to any of those things. But I do think that it is safer, as far as the bloat thing is concerned, to feed them twice a day and to mix some water with that dry food or some canned food with that dry food or something, so you're not just feeding a dry kibble that then has the potential to kind of expand and swell up. So go ahead.
I've never had a bulldog before, and this is the only dog I've ever had that either before or right after the dog eats, he'll start having the hiccups, and I don't know if that's bad or...
It's very normal. Puppies have hiccups all the time. Have any of you heard an adult dog hiccup? I never have. In 24 years of being a veterinarian, I have never heard an adult dog hiccup. But puppies hiccup all the time. It's very, very normal.
Why?
Is it that they eat too fast?
They go
No, you know, hiccups are a kind of a spasm of a nerve that travels across the diaphragm. So possibly as the puppy's growing and that diaphragm is stretching, maybe it's stimulating that nerve. We don't know, but it is something that happens all the time with puppies, and it's very, very normal. Now, the other thing that happens very frequently with puppies, also with older dogs, but a lot of us notice it for the first time with our puppies, is puppies will do a lot of what seems like dreaming while they're sleeping. They'll do a lot of jerking around, and they may yip or bark. They may moan and groan. Some people think they're having a seizure. This is called activated sleep, and it involves muscle fasciculations and contractions of the different muscles. Puppies that don't do this actually do not mature normally. They don't grow normally. So that's something that normal puppies do, and older dogs will do this sometimes also, but don't worry about this if you see it. It's not a seizure. It's perfectly normal, and it's healthy. One last thing about feeding your puppies. A lot of folks ask me how long they need to feed puppy food. And we all know that from an advertising standpoint, we're supposed to feed it for the first full year of our puppy's life. From a marketing standpoint, that's a good thing. From a veterinary standpoint, we want to feed a puppy food through the rapid growth phase of our puppy's life. That's usually 6 to 9 months of age. So once they get past that point, it's a good time to move them on to their adult food. They don't necessarily need all those extra calories and all that extra protein. And we certainly don't want to feed adult dogs puppy food, because that creates more of a workload for their bodies. They don't need that level of nutrients once they get into adulthood. So 6 to 9 months of age for most puppies is just fine. Now, next I want to talk about exposing our puppies to people and other dogs. It is a very, very good thing to socialize puppies. That's what you guys are all doing right now. And when we socialize our puppies, we're trying to socialize them to not only other dogs, but certainly to other people. When puppies are very young, when you first bring them home, and before they're fully protected against infectious disease, which is usually around 16 to 18 weeks of age, we want to be very cautious in our exposure of these puppies to unvaccinated dogs. Okay? So coming to a puppy class like this, where we know that all the other puppies have been checked, they're healthy, they've been vaccinated, is a fine thing, but we don't want to expose these guys to dogs that we don't know are protected from infectious diseases. So what we don't want to do at this point, before 16 to 18 weeks of age, is take them out to public places like the park or the city market or a big pet food superstore, or maybe even walking down the sidewalk, because you don't know what that dog they meet might be carrying. And even though they may have had 1 or 2 vaccinations, until they are 16 to 18 weeks of age, they're not fully protected against things like distemper and parvovirus. Very, very important. So now is the time to keep these guys in a safe environment at home, or in a very predictable environment like this, where all these other puppies are healthy. But during this time is when you want to expose them to all kinds of different people. You'd like these guys to be exposed to every kind of person that you want them to be well adjusted to. Men, women, kids, people in uniform, and by all means, strangers. Okay? If we keep them at home and never expose them to anybody but our family, all of a sudden when people start coming over to our house, they're going to be scared because they don't know who these people are and they see them as a threat. So during the formative time, up to 4 months of age, if we can expose these guys to lots of different people in a real positive way, they will start to see strangers as their friends. So by all means, invite everybody over, have a puppy party. Have all your friends meet the puppy. Have them give your puppy treats so that when your puppy sees a stranger come to the door, they anticipate that they're going to get something wonderful to eat. If we're worried about our dogs being watchdogs for security purposes, just having them there is enough. They don't have to actually be aggressive to fulfill that goal of being a security provider for us. So get all kinds of people over. Now, certainly we want to have kids come over and be exposed to our puppies, because sometimes if we get these puppies as adults and we don't have a lot of kids in our family, then all of a sudden somebody comes over with a 3-year-old and the dog goes berserk. So make sure that if you don't have kids, invite some folks over that have them so that these puppies get used to kids. But one word of caution, kids have a lot of energy. So 12 kids and a very young puppy may not be the right combination. I'd keep the kids to like numbers of 3 or less so that they don't overwhelm the puppy. But be sure that we get exposure to kids when they're at this really, really young age. Okay? Now, some other kind of scheduling things I want to talk about depending on the age of your puppy. A lot of puppies will need some grooming as they get older. They've got long enough hair that they're going to need to go to a groomer to be groomed. A lot of people ask when they should do that for the first time. Certainly we don't want to wait too long, but we do want our puppies to be protected against these contagious diseases because a grooming shop's going to have lots of dogs there. So once your puppy is past that 16 to 18 week of age range and your veterinarian says that they've finished all their shots, then is the time to get them acquainted with your groomer. Okay? They need to learn at an early age what clippers are, what it's like to get their nails trimmed, their ears cleaned out, and all that kind of stuff. If we wait till they're a year of age, that is going to be a much tougher thing for them to do. So by all means, get them established with a groomer so that they know from the get-go that this is a fun experience, not a scary one. And to prepare them for that, or to make life easier for your veterinarian. At this age, it's a wonderful thing to get these guys used to opening up their mouths, sticking your fingers in their ears, pulling on their tails, picking up their feet and wiggling their toes. If they get used to this at home, then the first time we try to trim their toenails, it won't be such a traumatic experience for either the puppy or their veterinarian. So kind of get in the habit of doing that even on a daily basis, and then the puppy will be much easier to handle if they have a veterinary problem they have to be examined. All right. Now, scheduling neutering. Most all of our pets are going to be spayed or neutered, and we want to do that at specific times. Female dogs will come into heat around 6 months of age. There is no medical or behavioral reason to have a female dog go through a heat cycle. It doesn't help them in any way. And it does increase the incidence of cancer later in life, specifically mammary cancer. So these female dogs will be much healthier if we can spay them before they ever go into heat. So if you know you're not going to breed your dog, between 5 and 6 months of age is a wonderful time. That way you know you're going to beat that first heat cycle. Now, our little boys are going to reach sexual maturity a little bit later than that. But once they do, they're going to start hiking their leg in your house. And actually, their testosterone levels are going to be highest at 6 months of age than they will be for the rest of their life. So your house training will be much easier if you go ahead and neuter these guys at 5 to 6 months of age. from a veterinary standpoint, it's a very safe time to do it, and that will make your life a lot easier. So 5 to 6 months of age for both males and females as far as neutering. That's our recommendation.
I frequently have a lot of clients ask me about the whole neutering 5 or 6 months. They want to wait longer for their male dogs because they think that testosterone helps build more muscles. They're going to get bigger and they want a big dog. They want a big macho dog. And they don't think that that's going to happen if they neuter them that young. What's your take on that?
Actually, neutering an animal makes them grow larger, believe it or not. A lot of people don't realize this, but a dog will get larger if they are, a male dog will get larger if they are neutered. And they will, the level of muscle development of a dog is going to depend on how much exercise they get, not whether they have testosterone or not. Also, it's not going to affect their performance. A lot of times people that have sporting breed dogs will feel that they're not going to be as good a hunter if they are neutered. And that is a fallacy. Most of the time they're going to be able to concentrate better if they don't have all that testosterone running around in their veins. So from that standpoint, no need to hold off on neutering a dog. Now, there is one aspect of neutering a male dog we do need to be aware of. When we do remove the testosterone from male dogs, they may tend to get heavier than an unneutered male dog. So once we neuter these males, we need to watch their waistlines. And if they start to get pudgy, we need to cut back on their calories. This is not a bad thing. You can feed less dog food that way. But that's the only thing that's going to be affected by neutering them, Charlotte. Okay?
Cool.
All righty. Yes, Carl.
You had talked about exercise.
Uh-huh.
And my goal was to get out and run with my pup. And I know I shouldn't do it too soon, but when's a good time to start that sort of activity?
It's a great question. Obviously, these guys need lots of exercise. But it's important to realize that dogs on their own engage in intermittent activity. A dog will run around like crazy and then stop and sniff, and then run around like crazy and then stop and dig, and then run around like crazy and stop and scratch. But what they don't do is they don't run nonstop for several miles or for 45 minutes. So when we have young puppies particularly, we don't want to encourage them to do excessive exercise outside of what is normal puppy play. Now, normal puppy play is one thing, but if we're going to take a dog out on a hike or take them out for a walk or go out and jog with our dogs, best to wait till they're at least 6 months of age, and probably that 6 to 9 month of age range is a little better. And the reason is growing puppies still have unfused growth plates. Their bones are very delicate. Over-exertion and constant impact on their bones and joints can cause damage. And another good way to think about this is you would not let your 7-year-old go to the gym and lift weights. You wouldn't let your 7-year-old child go run 5 miles. We want to take the same approach to a young puppy. So while they're young, if we want to take them out and do training for a sporting breed dog, if we want to take them out for a walk with us, I really encourage you to keep it to about 15 or 20 minutes maximum until they're about 6 months of age. Okay, that will be much healthier for them. Otherwise, go out in the backyard and play like crazy, but let them do that intermittent puppy play type of exercise. All righty. Now, a couple other things. I think Charlotte has talked to you about appropriate and safe toys for your puppies. And what I want to do is kind of mention some of the inappropriate toys that I see, because what I end up doing is I end up treating puppies for the consequences of playing with inappropriate or dangerous toys. So let me just kind of give you a little bit of food for thought. Anything a puppy can ingest or swallow is potentially life-threatening. So when we give puppies toys, we need to be very cautious of something that they can either swallow on its own or that they can chew up and swallow. And a lot of times what happens is we start out with this little teeny tiny puppy that can't get their mouth around the Pepsi bottle, but they're sure having fun rolling it around on the ground. And over the course of a couple weeks, they double in size and their teeth get a lot stronger, and all of a sudden they can chew into that Pepsi bottle, bite it into shreds, and swallow it. And then all of a sudden we have a puppy with an intestinal foreign body that requires emergency surgery. So do not give your puppies things that they can chew up and swallow of any kind. And I get puppies in here with plastic pop containers. I get them in here with aluminum pop cans. And you guys have no idea what an aluminum can does once they bite through it. I've had to reattach tongues. So these things are not safe items. I think a lot of us have seen the story about the dog that swallowed the butcher knife. Okay? Dogs can swallow incredibly large things. They can swallow pretty good sized balls. They can swallow linear objects like knives, pins, things like that. So be very, very cautious about what you give your puppies access to. Also watch some pet toys that you buy. You may buy your dog a perfectly nice latex dog toy with a squeaky in it. If they are going to destroy that, squeakies do not always pass through the intestinal tract. So if you have a dog that destroys their toys, monitor that and get them some of these harder toys that they can't do this with, like Kongs and some of these interactive toys that they have. But be very, very careful. Now, last but not least, one of the most dangerous things a dog can do is eat fabric. Towels, socks, pieces of shirts, string-like items. You wouldn't think it, but fabric gets into the intestinal tract and burrows into the lining of the intestinal tract and can fold it up like an accordion. One of our most serious, most life-threatening causes of intestinal obstruction is eating cloth. And this includes their bedding. So if you're putting a towel in there, a little crate liner, and your puppy decides to chew it up for recreation while you're gone, this can be life-threatening. If you see this scenario, pull it out. These guys may not be able to have bedding. Even as adults, there's a pretty good percentage of my patients that cannot have bedding in with them because they will eat it. And who's to say that dog may have chewed it up and spit it out 50 times in a row, but the time it decides to chew it up and swallow it may be the time that you're coming to see your veterinarian for emergency surgery. So be very cautious of that and try to avoid letting them have access to that kind of material. Other things that puppies do all the time is eat junk. You know, you let them out in the yard and all of a sudden they start eating every stick, stone, and leaf in sight. And what do? I mean, they do it every time. You figure this has got to be normal. It is. And it can, and frequently does, make them sick. Because if they eat enough leaves and sticks and rocks, they're going to have intestinal problems. One of the most common causes of a puppy coming in for vomiting and diarrhea is that they're out in the yard grazing on stuff. So it's kind of the same rule of thumb that you take with a toddler. You got to go out and you basically can't leave them unsupervised. And if they're going to go out there and graze on everything in sight, you're going to have to take it away from them. Or you may just end up with more frequent trips to the veterinarian than you'd like to. Now, the other thing people ask me is, why does my dog eat grass? Because it tastes good. It's not because they don't have a good balanced diet. It's not because they need to make themselves throw up. It's because it tastes good. And if you'll watch a dog in the spring when the grass is new, they'll go out there and graze like a cow. It tastes really, really good. Keep in mind that dogs are omnivores. Then omnivores, just like us, they need all the major food groups. They don't just need meat. Now, cats are carnivores. They need meat. Only meat, they need meat. Dogs are omnivores. They need vegetables in their diet as well as meat. And in the wild, dogs get this not only by eating grass and things like that, but by eating whole animals that have probably eaten plant material, partially digested it, so when they eat the intestinal tract of that rabbit, they're fulfilling some of their their nutritional needs. They evolved to meet those needs, however, on their own, so they're going to go out and eat this stuff as a way of nature telling them how they fulfill their nutritional needs. Probably don't need it, but they've evolved through the years to go do that. Now, if they eat enough grass, will it upset their stomach? Certainly. If they eat the grass that the lawn service has just sprayed with herbicide, will it cause problems? Most certainly. And some herbicides and pesticides can cause cancerous changes in dogs. So these things all, we all need to take this into account and be cautious when our dogs go out there and start grazing, but it is a natural thing for them to do. Dogs cannot handle heat, and a lot of times we don't realize the extent of this. We sweat through our pores or our skin. Dogs do not. Dogs eliminate excess heat by panting and a very small amount by heat exchange through their ears. The larger the dog, the more heat they have to eliminate and the harder time they have eliminating excess heat. So a large breed dog has a difficult time not getting overheated. There can also be dramatic differences in a dog's tolerance to heat. You may have two dogs of the same breed that are vastly different in their ability to handle heat. Lastly, a short-nosed breed like a boxer is going to be more impaired because they're going to have a little more trouble moving air because of the constricted airways they have because of their shorter face. So all you can really do is realize that any time after or above 80 degrees, you need to be concerned about the dog showing signs that they may be getting heat stressed, okay? And if you see that, a lot of times if you've got a highly motivated dog, you're not going to see it until they drop. So in those circumstances, if they've been going non-stop for more than 20 minutes, you probably want to do something to interrupt that activity. So if we are in heat situations that are over even 80 degrees, we want to be very cautious. If we've got a puppy that's really going non-stop, if it's been more than, say, 20 minutes, you probably want to intervene and slow that puppy down somehow. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. You may just physically grab them and say, quit running around and playing. Come into the house. If you're taking a walk, you may want to try to get that puppy to go take a little dip in the creek that you're walking by, or you may want to hose them down. But somehow or another, the first thing to do would be to try to somehow cause that puppy or dog to slow down. You bring them to you and put them in a sit-stay and just make them stay there for a while. If you feel like your dog is in distress, this is a crisis situation and it needs to be dealt with quickly. And the biggest thing that you need to do is figure out a way to cool that dog down as quickly as you can. So you need to get them to water and you need to hose them down. You need to get them in a creek. You need to send somebody to, go get a jug of water and pour over them. Do anything you can to cool that dog down. If you are away from your home environment, pick the dog up and carry it home. Do not make them continue to walk. Get them home, get them cool, and realize that getting them wet quickly is one of the best things you can do. If this kind of a situation happens and you feel like you've got the dog cooled down, it's still a good idea to check with your veterinarian. Most of the time, what you're talking about is more a heat stress situation than a heat stroke. But because some individuals can be very sensitive to this, you want to be cautious. And, we're talking about the short-nosed breeds. This little bulldog, I have seen adult bulldogs overheat indoors in 80-degree situations. So you need to be very, very cautious. And again, don't hesitate. If you think the dog is hot, get them wet and cool them down. A lot of times in here, if I feel like I've got a dog that is getting hot even in a boarding situation, and whether we've still got the air conditioner on, but that dog appears to be hot, I'll put a bag of ice in there, run with them, and just let them cuddle up to the ice to where they can cool off. So don't hesitate to do that, and then be sure you check with your veterinarian.
even as young puppies, you can already start doing some basic, simple obedience commands like sit and down and come. It's really easy just to show them what you want them to do and do a little practice every day. And it's really going to save you a lot in the long run. Let's take a quick look at how you can actually start those easy commands. To teach your puppy to sit, pull up on his collar, push down on his bottom, and say sit and praise him. Be careful not to push in the middle of his back, but instead to kind of tuck his butt under. That was very good, Guinness. Do you want to try that again? When you get ready to teach your puppy to sit, you want to lift up on his collar, tuck his butt under, and say sit, and then praise him and tell him what a good puppy he is. That was very good, Guinness. Thank you. Make sure that you're pressing down back here and kind of tucking his butt under instead of pressing in the middle of his back. That was good. Should we try it again? Stand up here. That's a good stand. Now let's sit. Sit. Oh, very good. To get your puppy to lay down, pat the ground, say down. Oh, that was way too easy, Guinness. Let's try it again. To get your puppy to lay down, pat the ground, down, and then just simply push him into a down, roll him over to one side, and praise him. Stay. Good. At this age, you're not worried about stays very much, just getting him into a down. Come here. When you want to take a puppy for a walk, if he's got the leash in his mouth, quit. Jerk it out and encourage him to stop. You want him on your left side, so just coax him. Come on. Come on, come with me. Come with me. Oh yeah, that's a good boy. And you just kind of keep moving. Good pupper, yay! Lots of encouragement. Stop occasionally and praise. That's a good dog. All right, come with me. Heel, come on, that's a good pup. And then just coax him to come with you. Try not to hesitate too much and just keep walking. Good boy, that's a good pup. All right. Good boy. When you get ready to start practicing with your puppy on come, just let him wander off a bit from you and then get really happy. Guinness, come! Yay! Good puppy dog. You always wanted to make it a really big deal whenever he comes to you. Lots and lots of praise. Never do anything negative when he comes. Let's try it again. Guinness, come! Yay! Oh, what a good doggy you are. That was very good. Just lots of praise. Keep it fun. Guinness, come! Yay! Woo! Over here! Oh, good puppy. And it doesn't matter at this point that they're jumping up on you. You just want them to come to you and to make coming to be the very best thing that it can be.